I think we are good to go. A very good evening to everyone from Early Child Development Forum. I am Dr. Vasavi Acharya, the founder chairperson, and today we are here with webinar series number 4. And today the topic of our webinar is supporting early math with creative approaches. Today we are joined by a panel of experts who would be speaking on the same. And we have with us Brooke Gomes. She has impacted young children for the past 10 years in US and Africa. She is a preschool leader empowering the next generation of teachers to continue to express their passion for children through evidence-based learning. She has joined us from Houston, Texas today. Welcome, Brooks.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Lovely to have you. And we have with us Ali Golding, a highly qualified and experienced dance educator, dance movement scientist, researcher, and lecturer. Ali is trained to evaluate and teach neurophysical psychology within educational settings. She is a published academic writer and has worked professionally with children with disabilities. Ali is joining us from UK. Welcome, Ali, on board. And we have with us Nadine Sergal. She is an educator at Tawam International School, Oman. Welcome, Nadine.
Thank you very much for having me.
So we start with the topic, which is very interesting, supporting early math with creative approaches. And my first question is to Ali. Ali, you are a dance movement scientist and a researcher and a lecturer. So would you tell us about the brain-body connection and how movement enables learning with special reference to early math? You have to unmute yourself, Ali. Darpan, could you assist in unmuting? Yes.
Oh, thank you. It's just working. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, perfect.
Oh, good. Good. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. Really, I get to talk about my favorite topic, which is movement and its relationship to learning. We're born to move. In fact, the only reason that we have brains, really, is to move. And if people are finding that a difficult concept to get their head around, I recommend watching neuroscientist Daniel Wolpert's TED Talk. It's called The Real Reason We Have Brains, The Real Reason for Brains. You know, TED Talks are about 20 minutes long, so not for now, but maybe for later. From an evolutionary point of view, and from a child development point of view, the brain develops through movement. So for anybody in the early years, whether you're a parent of an early years child, or certainly if you're an early years educator, you are educating your children for their brain development. To borrow from a colleague, we don't learn from the neck up, but we learn from the feet up. So all of us, adults too, benefit from a full-bodied learning experience. It helps us to stay alert, and it supports and enhances memory as well, which is another thing that's important when we're learning academics. So as a movement person, I know I've got limited time, but let's just do a few things now, what I call some brain priming movements to help engage with the learning, because we've got about an hour of this webinar altogether. And I'll choose some sort of, as we have a maths topic, some early maths ideas that we can all share. Let me just move this back so you can see me a little bit better. Great, can you see me? Great, so we're going to use our fingers and we're going to do 1, 2, 3 and shake. 1, 2, 3 and shake. 1, 2, 3 and shake. You can join in too. 1, 2, 3 and shake. Excellent. All right. Now, I want you to use your two index fingers, bring them together, and we're going to imagine that we've got a door in front of us. So, just move this back slightly. So, we're going to draw the door That's the top of the door. They're the long sides of the door, and that's the bottom of the door. So a rectangle, in fact, yeah? So let's draw our rectangle like that. Brilliant. And then we're going to paint the door. So we're going to count the corners. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, paint the door. 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 Excellent. All right, now we're going to go from 4s to 8s. Still with our same index fingers, we're going to draw an 8. So we're going to go round the corner, down to the bottom, round the corner, join it up. Round the corner, down to the bottom, round the corner, join it up. Round the corner, down to the bottom, round the corner, and join it up. Round the corner, down to the bottom, round the corner, and join it up. Now we're going to do a lazy 8, an 8 that feels a little bit tired and is going to sleep. So we're going to go round the corner here, through the middle, round the other corner, through the middle, and join it up. Around, through the middle, around, through the middle, join it up. So we're going to do lazy 8s. Lazy 8s. Lazy 8s. Lazy 8s. Excellent. So we should now have primed our brain and be ready for some content. So I'm coming back to join you a little bit closer. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Fantastic. So young bodies and minds require, I'm going to put my glasses back on as well. Young bodies and mind require concrete physical experiences to actually make sense of the world. And of course, movement is a full-bodied sensory experience. So movement impacts on every learning area in the early years, not just physical development. This perspective is particularly relevant to the area of maths. Many children and adults actually struggle with maths as a subject through life. And I believe it's because it's frequently taught too much and too early sometimes in the abstract. I'm a big fan of Montessori pedagogy, as at its core is education through movement. The didactic materials that are designed to support early mathematical understanding are once again full-bodied sensory experiences. And all of them include a control of error, which means that the child, by working with those didactic materials, is the agent for their own learning to build both physical and intellectual confidence simultaneously. I don't know if we can now share some of those images. There's an image of the Montessori didactic materials. There's a pink tower in there, and there's some wooden didactic materials that help with weight and size comparison. Can we share those on the screen?
Darpan, can you share the screen?
Yes, 1 minute, please.
Sure. So while we're waiting for that to come up, I can just describe them. So there are many of these didactic materials, but perhaps one of the most famous, well-known one is called the Pink Tower. Of course, it doesn't have to be pink; it is just traditionally pink, and it's a set of blocks going from the largest to the very smallest. There they are, thank you so much. It's a set of blocks going from the very largest to the smallest. And what's really important here to understand is that it's not conceptual, but it's a tool to be used in a practical way. And the child really has to use a lot of physical effort to pick up that largest one. It's usually the breadth of their own shoulders, and they have to use quite a lot of proprioceptive feedback to know how much effort it takes to lift that. And the idea is that the blocks are built up, and once built up to the very top, they're often made to be the size of a toddler, so they get a real sense of weight and size, and really having physicalized that. And you can see there's the brown stair there at the top of the image, and then lots of the wooden weight and size comparison tools. Brilliant. If we could move on now to the red rods. I gave you 2 images, either or both of those would be useful. And again, this is a length and measure comparison, still with this control of error. So the very smallest rod, just like the very smallest cube in the pink tower, is used as the control of error. So the length of that rod is the distinction between the longest and then the next one going all the way down to the shortest. So the child gets to really try that out and compare for themselves. And if we can get those images up, you can see how physical that interaction really is. They're working in their own space, and they're using quite a lot of effort to pick up those rods and to work with them. Of course, all of these are inherently creative tools. So once the child has experienced the objective of one particular use, of course, the creativity of those didactic materials is really endless. And it's these theories and principles and practices that were the basis for the Movement Works early years program called Developmental Dance Movement, which I designed as a movement scientist. For those who are interested, because we've got limited time, more information on this can be found on the dedicated webpage on the Movement Works website. So you can see how those Montessori principles, along with the scientific principles, are inherently captured within a dance movement program. Understanding the world comes from direct physical experiences. Before we can, am I still there? I seem to have disappeared on the screen. Oh, there we are. It comes from direct physical experiences. So before we can start to abstract information, and of course, this will influence a child's ability to progress in other key areas, such as mathematical, obviously. The reason, and we started with this in our little warm-up sequence, the reason children count on their fingers is a scientifically acknowledged phenomenon. We call it finger gnosis. So far from discouraging a child to use external and certainly the body parts to help with their mathematical conceptualization, in fact, we should be doing the opposite. We should be encouraging it. And the same principles are true, of course, even though it's not the focus of this discussion, for literary progression. So physical metaphors are, of course, embedded in our everyday language, and that includes mathematical language. So, for example, we find ourselves going round in circles, or we're lost in space and time. Or we feel we're on the edge. All of those things need to be physicalized and understood in a concrete way before we can start to abstract them. And of course, we do it in language, don't we? We do it in language when we teach our children language. First is, what is this? And it's the same thing, of course, for maths, that we learn shapes in that way, colors in that way. Then, who is this? Then where is this? And much, much later comes when, and why. And of course, that's why, you know, when a child begins to learn telling the time, it's such a huge milestone, because it's a massive intellectual conceptual leap to start to tell the time and to understand what that really is. So we can best support mathematical learning through full embodied experiences. And of course, what is movement anyway? How do we really make sense of interacting with the environment in real terms? For this, we can look to Rudolf Laban, if anybody is familiar with his work. I believe really he was even though he didn't have that title, he was the very first dance scientist. He was responsible for formalizing movement into essentially what are 4 elements. And again, if we can screen share, I can just illustrate that for you very, very briefly. So when we understand, thank you, when we understand what those 4 elements really are, we can start to see their relationship to mathematical understanding. So the first is, you can see is a W there, which stands for weight. So when we move our bodies and or objects, we interact with them in terms of physical effort. I've already mentioned that with use of the Pink Tower. And how much effort we exert depends, of course, on the task at hand. So in other words, we really cannot have a true understanding of weight without a physical experience of it. And of course, the Pink Tower is a great example of an illustration of that. And then concepts of space and time, I'm going to speak of at the same time, because of course they are intrinsically related. We cannot really have an understanding of one without the other one. We need to experience what is fast and what is slow, and how we use space relative to the speed. So for example, the distance between point A and point B takes so many steps if I travel in a straight line, or more steps if I go there indirectly. Once I can physicalize and understand that conceptually, then I can start to perceive the concept of standard time and of measurements. And the very last element is an element that Laban calls flow. This is really the first human experience of physics, and we know obviously that physics and maths are intrinsically related, they're correlated. And flow is really about energy. So if you like, the bound, held in energy of adults as opposed to the free flowing energy of young children. So to rein it in is to do our youngest learners the greatest disservice, really. They are physical explorers for a reason. So this is why I'm an advocate of an intentional dance movement approach, because it can encompass all of these essential physical experiences in a fun and engaging way, which of course makes it motivating. It makes it jump off the whiteboard or off the page. Plus music, which of course is the sister to dance, is a very important additional element. When we dance, usually we dance with music. I'm aware there's another presenter today who's going to focus and speak about the impact of music. So I don't want to encroach on what they're going to say, but just really to set the scene. Again, am I still there? Because I can't see myself now. There we are. So we know that there are many studies that link mathematical competence to musical ability. It's a phenomenon. And why should that be? Because conceptually, maths is largely about recognizing sequences and patterns and adhering to particular frameworks. And they're the very same learning structures that occur in music and dance. So again, when we were doing our warm-up, I was counting to keep a rhythm, and I was counting, and that familiarizes ourselves with the patterns and the sequences that are inherent in dance and that cross over to our mathematical understanding. And of course, this this involves a worldwide understanding. In every culture, we are drawn to and understand music. But one last point to focus in on before we move to another speaker or take questions, it's not just the music itself, but it's our physical response. That's really, really important. So going back to something I just mentioned, rhythmic awareness, which we call entrainment or beat competency, is achieved through the physical practice of simple to more complex rhythmic patterns. And that's associated with both language and with mass development. And there's been a lot of research in the field of music. Just to pull one out of the hat, there's a study by Jay Bowler, 2016, and colleagues. Pianists and other musicians often display higher mathematical understanding than people who don't learn a musical instrument. But it's the rhythmic and movement competency that's the critical factor, not just the listening to music. Yeah, I think I've got there in 12 minutes.
Right, very beautifully explained, Ali, the basic body and brain connection that is so essential, you know, for development and learning, and also essentially develops cognitive skills in children in their early years. So coming to Nadine, Nadine, you are an early childhood educator and you have been working in this discipline for a very long time. And basically you work around the multiple intelligence approach. So tell us how we can connect innovative and creative. How can we get innovative and creative with math lessons in each domain? Over to you, Nadine.
Good afternoon, Dr. Vasavi, my fellow speakers and the viewers. Early childhood development. Hi. Okay, good afternoon. Early childhood development in math and creative ways to teach it. I'm going to share a presentation now, and I will discuss it with you. Okay, thank you. Okay. My introduction is Howard Gardner proposed a theory of multiple intelligence that we can use to ensure that all learners are taken into consideration when teaching and assessing. This theory helps in incorporating innovative methods of teaching that can be used within a classroom and home. We need to find a child's individual strengths, their type of learning styles, to illuminate methods that can enforce it through inclusion and differentiation. Dr. Howard Gardner, a developmental psychologist born in 1943, established a baseline theory for how we as humans have different ways of processing information. These are the 8 multiple intelligences that I sought to discuss on the way we teach math. Does a child have to be number smart to excel in math? What Dr. Gardner proposes is not the subject itself, but rather the way we teach the subject and how the learners process the information. The first one is logical, mathematical. Learners like numbers, critical thinking, and patterns. Learning tools that can be used are puzzles, logical reasoning, investigations, experiments, and mysteries. As you can see below, these methods can be used also at home, and they're used for counting and building. Spatial visual. Learners like to visualize, draw, read maps, and daydream. Learning tools include pictures, drawings, 3D models, graphs, maps, and charts. As you can see below, it must be visual. You can use sweets. Children enjoy using sweets. And a reward chart, because it is visual, they can see it. Math strategies, instead of numbers, we can say draw pictures or find a pattern. Using maths, you can also use a map and they have to count or find certain things within a picture. Musical. Learners like to listen to music, sing and play instruments. The learning tools include multimedia presentations, musical instruments, rhythm and rhyme. There are many rhymes in math which we do use currently, like this one I have here. You can also dress up and dance and incorporate it within your lesson. You can build musical instruments. They enjoy getting involved with the instruments and creating it, and then you can use it while counting. For instance, you can play a game and they must hit the drum on every even number or clap their hands on an odd number whilst you count maybe up to 20. There are many platforms online and applications that you can use that is music orientated. Bodily kinesthetic. Learners like dancing, physical activities, construction and role playing. The learning tools include objects, equipment and hands-on learning. This is also very, you need to have lots of props and things they can build or make, construct. You can use your body and you can count. You can use blocks. Jelly bean maths, they like sweets because then they get to eat it afterwards. You can build not expensive materials and use it within the classroom. Hopscotch is also a good one. Instead of using the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can say, for instance, 10 and plus 1, and then they have to jump and then give an answer. So for instance, 10 plus 1 is 11. Then if they go on the number 3 now, you can say minus 2. So then they're also learning. You can do maths and subtraction or anything actually, but it's a good way to get them active and physical whilst learning math. Number 5 is linguistic words. We can use the numbers, but the words. And you can play different games. Learners like to read, write, talk, and listen. Learning tools include books, lectures, word games, and word sums. For instance, here is a game. You can do it in groups within your classroom because it would be chaos if you use the whole class. I have Start, who has 9. Now they need to match the word 9 with the number 9. I have 9, who has 12, and so forth. So it incorporates the words of the numbers for those who are word smart, as well as if you make presentations or posters. For the children who are word smart, you must put the words on there. For instance, count on. The word is there, they can read it. It's in front of them, as well as the people who are word number smart. The numbers are here. And there is colors for those who are visually or have a visual stimulus to colors. There's also different ways of patterns where you can use pictures, numbers, and words, as well as calendars, and they can match and build puzzles. So incorporating different domains within one domain. And obviously word sums. The cat has 5 toys. You give her 2 more, how many does she have? A word sum, not numbers. Number 6 is naturalistic, nurturing. Learners like plants, animals, exploring, collecting, and being outdoors. Learning tools include natural materials, photographs, and hands-on exploration and data collection. You can use insects. They can go out in the garden and you can count legs of the insects, or they can construct it. You can use it in methods of helping learn to count. You can use dough mats, sorting cards, or coloring pages. They can collect stones and write mathematical equations on them, obviously smaller numbers for early development. Plastic number bowling. This is data collection. They can now bowl outside And then the numbers that they have hit over, they can either add or subtract from a certain number. So it gets them physically involved with what they're doing. You can also do a number scavenger hunt outside. So they go and count and go and look for things and go play in the sand. It's very good for them to also learn about nature, which links to science. Number 7, interpersonal social skills. Okay, this is group, normally social, so it's group orientated. Learners like group interactions, talking, teaching, sharing. Learning tools include group activities, social networks, multimedia, and computers. Computers because, but not really for our younger kids, but there's many applications which they could maybe play together. Rainbow bingo, that's a good one. You can play as a class, a social thing. Get your learners to teach in front of the class, which helps get them also their abilities out. Math jingo, they can play as groups, which obviously math orientated. Cards is a very good one. You can also do math and subtraction, addition and subtraction, sorry, with cards. Uno as well. And group activities, posters and games. Number 8 is intrapersonal, which is the self. Learners like quiet time, reflection and reasoning. The learning tools include journals, books, self-assessment and creative materials. For instance, you can see this number 5 here. A child can work individually on this task, which includes pictures, words, body, and counting visual stimulus. As well as they can build their own journals, my first shape book or my number book. They also help enlist doing self-assessment where they can critique themselves and see what do they know. Roll and dot the numbers using dice. This they can do by themselves. So it's an intrapersonal activity because they can add it and then do it themselves. This is things I have done from my classroom experience. We are all able to include all the learners and also apply multiple learning styles through differentiation. We used many things like popsicle sticks, blocks, recycled materials, and objects parents easily find at home. My learners enjoyed videos and multimedia presentations, so I tried to incorporate it as my introduction to most of my lessons, because it gets them interested in what we're going to learn. Okay, if you would like to know more, here is a site I have put. There are many sites to find more information, but I prefer this one as it is more child-friendly. It's by Lara Cadler, and it has the test on there and how you can do it. It shows you exactly how to do it with your children. This survey can be done at home by parents or teachers as a fun activity to create self-awareness. And a final thought, love, laugh, and nurture. This is the only language young minds understand. I believe this is very good because children need to laugh. At early development stage, they need to engage, they need to have fun. And that is the most important thing through learning, is the engagement, social interaction, and fun of the teacher as well, and lessons. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nadine. That was wonderfully explained. And yes, we take in the VAC, which is the visual, audio, and the kinesthetic, learning ways, so that there is the maximum impact. Yeah, in many times in the classrooms, when we only look at, some of the very conventional schools only look at the academic in terms of, reading, writing, and just doing that work. But we try to engage children in all aspects, and you actually explained all of them in a systematic and very beautiful manner. And it is, I think, absolutely clear to all the listeners and our attendees of the webinar. So coming to Brooke. Brooke, tell us more about the benefits of utilizing music and movement to learn math in early childhood. And we would be glad if you share some strategies with the parents and educators who have joined us today.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. V. So like my former speakers said, fun is a huge, huge thing with increasing their motivation and keeping children's attention whenever you're teaching math. So it can be used when, even with children who have special needs, like dyslexia or the visually impaired, those who aren't going to get those visual aids, the music and movement, when you pair those, it's going to help them learn those math concepts in a way that's going to really impact them. Then also, you can even teach, more complex concepts like angles with having the children use their arms to create different types of angles. So, the more complex concepts aren't going to be so complicated for those little learners. Things like patterns, simple things you can do. It doesn't take a lot of materials, doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take really a lot of creativity for those who may struggle with trying to come up with different ways on how to teach their children. Patterns, just having a child copy your clapping pattern. You can use drums if you're in a classroom. You can use wooden spoons and pots and pans if you're at home. You can talk about the sounds, what's a loud sound, what's a soft sound. So you can really expand on a lot of these concepts. Another concept is more. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the song or story, There Was an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly. That's a story that builds on itself. That's a story where you can ask the child what comes next. You can even add ordinal numbers, where what did she swallow first? What did she swallow second? And that way you're getting more information into the child than just singing a song. Matching as well. Matching, you can, let's say you're in traffic and the children are kind of busy and wanting to get them active and a little bit calmed down. So you can start a game in the car by just making a sound and asking them, can you match the sound? Making cow sounds, making sounds of objects, trucks. Those things are fun because those are also things that they're learning in school, and they're going to be excited that they know what those sounds are. So it's just really easy and practical things that you can do with the children. Making comparisons whenever you're using sound and music. Which song is louder? Which song is softer? Which sound is fast? Which sound is slow? Asking them, okay, if I make a loud sound, can you then do the opposite and see if they then produce a softer sound? So it's getting them to, really think on their own too, by using questions and really pushing them to use their minds. Subtraction, one of the fun songs, very common song, are 10 in the bed. And then you can even have them really use their bodies by having, if you have multiple children, having them act out the song. And you can have them subtract, okay, if we have 10 in the bed, one fell out, how many do we have left? So you can make them really excited about the song. And it's just using things that they already know. And they're going to be excited because they're going to feel confident because they already know some things. They already know the song, they already know their numbers, and now you're just adding on to that. Using even and odd numbers as well. Having the children clap only on an even number or only on an odd number. And then they're going to start to understand, okay, this number is even because that's the one I clapped on. This one is odd because that's the one I did not clap on. So it's just a lot of really practical things that I like about activities with music and movement, because you can use them anywhere. Use them in the car, use them in the classroom, use them at home, small groups, large groups, individuals. And like my fellow speakers also said, the spatial awareness. You can do 5 little monkeys and have them jump up and down. And then they have to make sure that they're not jumping on top of each other. So it's being aware of their space, being aware of their timing. So it just really, there's just endless things that you can do as a parent or a teacher to help your children learn math in a fun and engaging way. And it doesn't have to be limited to a classroom. It doesn't have to be limited to just one sense, like a visual aid, or it doesn't have to be, or just writing or anything like that, like the multiple intelligences helps us do. And you can just incorporate all those really fun things, because music comes so naturally. You know, we sing to our babies when they're little. So the babies, it's a very natural thing. Movement, like Miss Ali said, movement and music comes so naturally to children, and they love it. And especially if math is something that a child struggles with, or they have a lack of interest, then music is a way to make it more fun and interesting for them.
Absolutely, Brooks. So lovely. I think that actually are some good strategies that you've shared for parents and educators to make math more, you know, generally when we are younger, and even when we grow up, math is always a challenge. And I think in order to break that, you know, that barrier, that block in our minds, it is very important to get into it with different techniques and with a lot of creativity and innovativeness, so that children develop that interest, and that interest stays back, you know, without worrying them. Because when I was a little girl, I used to be absolutely terrified of maths. And then that stayed back, you know. It was because I had a very stern sir who used to just teach me math and not do it innovatively and in a good way. So it got into me, and so that stays. And these are stories with a lot of children, you know, who do not get the right approach at the right time. So there's a question from Subra. I don't know, one of you may take it up. She's asking how to clear the concept of shape with an activity instead of coloring pages. Who would want to answer that? How to clear the concept of shape with an activity instead of coloring pages? Yes.
Sorry, an idea was I used toothpicks and sweets, those little jelly sweets, and you actually physically build the shapes. And they're very inclusive. You can use it for 2D shapes as well as 3D shapes. And they enjoy it so much. Or marshmallows. And they actually build the shapes. So instead of coloring pages, you can make it a hands-on activity where they actually build it. I hope that answered the question. My fellow speakers?
Yeah, can we probably use music and movement to explain shapes? Ali, would you want to take that?
Sure. Sure, I'm sure Brooke has some ideas as well. In order to evolve it even more to a full-bodied physical experience, one very simple thing to do is mark out the shapes on the floor. I'm a big advocate of painter's tape. We call it masking tape here. I'm sure you might, you know, have a different reference to it. But it's the kind of tape that comes off very easily on the floor, so it's not going to kind of spoil a nice polished floor. And you know, you can be really creative with that. Of course, hoops are really great for exploring circles, and then floor spots are really useful, that you can purchase from sports equipment. And I believe, as well as just different circles, different coloured circles, you can get them in different shapes as well. So there's lots of creativity that you can use for learning shape in a full-bodied and a way that takes it into the space and makes it really a full-bodied learning experience for the children. And then, of course, what's great about it is, you know, you can start to kind of make that smaller as well. So once they've experienced it fully in the shape, in the space, then you can start to maybe, as my colleague Nadine said, then start to build it, you know, in a smaller but still three-dimensional way, going back to the Montessori, and then you can start to abstract it onto the two-dimensional page. It makes it so much more real for the child.
Absolutely. So any more questions coming up? I don't see any questions in the chat box. So I think we had a very, very fruitful conversation in terms of a discussion with Brooks, Ali, and Nadine, who shared a lot of strategies to support early math with creative approaches. And before we wind up, I would like to announce our upcoming international teacher training program and paper presentation on 11th, 12th, and 13th of this month. And anybody who might be interested to enroll themselves can get in touch with us in our Facebook page, ECD Forum, or our website, www.ecdforum.org. Thank you so much for joining us, Brooke, Nadine, and Ali. Lovely to have you in this forum. And definitely we'll look forward to more webinars with you guys. And please stay connected so that we can contribute, in a positive manner to the early childhood domain that we are all working in. And ECDF is essentially working for the marginalized section. So we would be happy if you sometimes, share your suggestions and ideas, which we can take to our rural areas and share with the children who do not have the opportunity to learn all of this, because they're not going to good schools and stuff. So thank you so much for joining us, and a very good evening to everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you all the attendees for being here with us.
Goodbye.